Welcome. Welcome back. This is Dr. Mark Smith going over product development today. Essentially, you're going to be creating a product or service for for this company, for this class. So, I wanted to make sure that you understood exactly what you would be doing. Let's get started, shall we? So, we're going to go over 6 basic steps to product and service development. The first is idea generation. The next will be product and service definition. Next will be design and development, prototype construction, testing, and then finally production. So, the first step, idea generation, you're going to establish certain criteria and specifics that you're going to go over. The first is, what problem does my product or service solve? You need to designate a specific area that your product or service is going to, I guess, interject and actually go into as far as like solving a specific issue, because that's what you're going to be producing as far as your product or service. What is the benefit of my idea to consumers? Like, why would customers or consumers want your specific product or service? Next, will the idea be accepted by the masses? Is this something that can be sold and addressed to a larger group of people? Are you going to, or whatever target market you're going to go after? And last but not least, does this idea even make sense? You want to use some iterations or think about it from an outside standpoint and maybe ask some other people how your idea sounds to make sure that it actually be something that's tangible and sellable. The next, we're going to go over the product definition portion. This is when you started after you come up with your idea generation. You're going to start kind of conceptualizing it into an actual presentable document. This is when you're going to finalize your product service will actually do. Essentially, what's the end goal of whatever you're producing. You're going to create an outline of what the product or service will entail, as far as like what is all going to go into it, what the functionality is, and what it's going to address. You start to generate initial cost estimates as far as like how much you think it's going to be in order to operate or create this product. Then you're going to set up what you're going to differentiate from your competition. Like, how are you going to be different from the marketplace that's out there now? What's going to set you apart? And then you're going to define your ideas of the end result of your product or service will be essentially, what are you trying to accomplish with your product or service? What will be the end result of your customers going along with whatever you're creating? After the proposal phase, that's when you start moving into the design and development. Essentially, you've itemized and figured out exactly what you're trying to do and what the problem is that you're addressing. From that, you can create the blueprints, the models, schematics, whatever you need to, in order to showcase how that's going to work. Now, during this design development phase, you're going to constantly be evaluating during the process. It's an iterative process. It's always going to be changing. I can tell you this from your conception all the way to market launch, and then if you're in business for up to 20 years, you're still going to be doing iterations and changes to your design and development. After that initial portion where you evaluate during the process, you're going to create an initial test plan as far as how you're going to do this. As far as like, are you going to do sandbox testing with a small group of people? You're going to do some factor testing. You're going to put it in the field first. You're going to go over the process of how you're going to test your product or service before you do an official launch to the masses. Then you're going to make critical changes from your analysis of the testing and also the evaluation portion as you move along. And then hopefully you'll end up with a pretty well created prototype or design development that you can actually schematic and move through the next phase, which is going to be the prototyping portion. Now, this is where you use what you did in development to create an actual sample. From a product standpoint, it's going to be actually doing a proof of concept or something you actually create to get it going. Service portion, it's actually setting up an outline of how you would deal with your customer base. And what you'll do for physical product portion is you're going to build for evaluation and testing. You're going to try to break it over and over again. You're going to do things to it. You want to see the test the limits of it. That's how you're going to focus that. For the service structure, you're going to do more beta testing with participants to make sure and understand their experiences and what they wanted or didn't want during the process. That way you can fine tune it and make it more effective and efficient. And then during that, you're going to finalize your testing procedures to follow as you move through this process as well, like what iterations of testing you're going to do and how much you're going to do before you get into the actual launch of the product to the public. The testing phase itself, you're going to, of course, let's try to break what you built. Let you know if the product will actually work. This is where you can see it actually will function or do what you want it to do, whether it's a product or a service. You can do constant inspection and evaluation during this phase because you're constantly making testing and trying to see what you can do to it. This ensures your product or your service can perform to the expectations that you want to. That way, when you actually put it out into the field and let people actually test this product from a customer standpoint, they're satisfied or actually have an iteration that will function correctly or well. This phase can last as long as you need it to. Even after your market launch, you can do testing phases on newer products or new iterations or new changes. That way you can pretty much get customer feedback instantaneously and make adjustments to that based on it. Every Apple iPhone, everything that comes out is also essentially a testing phase as well. There's always bugs, glitches, and changes they need to make during the next iterations. Now, last phase is the production portion of it. This is when you actually build out and test your production model or service model. which essentially is scaling to a larger capacity of handling more customer base or more products in a single session. This is when you test the initial units for trial to ensure model is correctly working. When you create a prototype from scratch, if you did like let's say in your house or your garage, you had full control of what you're doing. When you're building out for a production portion of it, usually you're outsourcing or having others do it for you, machine based, and you want to ensure that that quality that you can do by hand is replicated over and over again to ensure that you are sending out what you stand behind. So that's why you want to test out the first trials to ensure that the model can work the way you want it to, there's no glitches to it, and it can function and is as strong as you want it to be. After that, you can gather customer and employee feedback from the conventional improvements as you go through this process. I always harp on employee feedback because they're the ones that are frontline and see it. They can make alterations and recommendations on how to make your products and services better. And of course, customers can do that as well. And then last, you'll make adjustments either technical or product based or technical or product or service based after the first run, as far as like what services you might not want to offer, need to offer, how many you can set the meeting schedules for that. And the technical portion could be like what its product is made out of, how functionality is it, how big is it, et cetera, et cetera. And that's going to be you setting up that. And that's pretty much the portion of creating the production phase of coming up with your specific product or service. Um, this is when you'll do your brainstorming portion of it, and then we can move on there. But that's enough for today on specifically the production model or the production phase as far as like idea generation and coming up with stuff. If you need anything further, let me know, and I've enjoyed our time today.